Do you ever feel like you're constantly fighting life? Like every morning you wake up and you're preparing for battle. Every decision feels like a war inside your head. Every goal requires you to white-knuckle your way through exhaustion. And the worst part? You can't stop, because stopping feels like losing. If this is you, if you're tired, burned out, but terrified to let go, I need to tell you something. You're not weak, you're not failing, but you are trapped. Trapped in a role that's destroying you from the inside out. The role of the warrior. And here's what nobody tells you. The way you're fighting, it's the exact reason you're losing. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you why going with the flow isn't about giving up. It's about finally winning. Not through force, through something far more powerful. Stay with me. This changes everything. Let me ask you something. When was the last time something came easily to you? When was the last time you got what you wanted without having to claw your way there? For most of you, it's been so long you can barely remember. Because you've been taught that life is supposed to be hard, that if you're not struggling, you're not doing it right. That ease equals laziness and rest equals failure. Most people wear their exhaustion like a badge of honor. I worked 16 hours today. I haven't taken a day off in months. I'm running on 3 hours of sleep. And somewhere deep down, you believe this makes you valuable, that your worth is measured by how much you suffer, how much you sacrifice, how hard you fight. But here's the thing. Here's what I need you to really hear. You've been lied to. The culture told you, no pain, no gain. Your parents told you, nothing worth having comes easy. Society told you hard work is the only path to success. And you believed it. Because when you were young, maybe the world didn't feel safe. Maybe you learned that control equals survival. That if you let your guard down, everything falls apart. So you became a warrior, always alert, always defending, always fighting. And here's the cruelest part of all. The harder you fight, the harder life pushes back. The more you force, the more resistance you meet. It's like you're swimming against a current that gets stronger the more effort you put in. You've been told this is normal, that this is just how life works. But what if I told you there's another way? A way where you move with the current instead of against it, without becoming passive, without giving up your power, without surrendering your dreams. Before we go deeper, we need to talk about the 3 types of people who never find flow. 3 roles that keep you stuck, and I'm willing to bet you recognize yourself in at least one of them. The first is the asker. This person drifts through life passively. They ask the universe for help. They hope for the best, but they never take the wheel. They're like a paper boat on the water, moved entirely by forces outside themselves. No agency, no direction, just floating and hoping they don't sink. The second is the offended. They also drift, but with resentment. Life happens to them and they take it personally. Every obstacle is proof the world is against them. Every setback confirms their victim story. They're still in the current, but their whole experience is colored by bitterness. And then there's the warrior. This is probably you. The warrior doesn't drift. The warrior fights against the current, against circumstances, against reality itself. You wake up ready for battle. You approach every problem like an enemy that needs to be defeated. You push, you force, you willpower your way through everything. And you're exhausted, constantly, because you're burning energy fighting battles that don't need to be fought. Here's the thing about all 3. None of them are actually free. The asker is powerless, the offended is trapped in victimhood, and the warrior? The warrior is enslaved by the fight itself. You think you're in control because you're fighting, but really, you're being controlled by the need to fight. Let me go deeper. The warrior identity? It's not strength, it's a trauma response. Stay with me on this. When you were young, maybe the world felt unpredictable, unsafe. Maybe you learned that the only way to survive was to stay vigilant, to always be ready, to never let your guard down. So you developed this pattern. Control everything, trust nothing, fight for every inch. And it worked. For a while. It kept you safe, it got you results. But here's what happened. That survival mechanism became your identity. You went from I need to fight to survive to I am a fighter. And now, even when there's no threat, you're still in battle mode. Even when there's an easier path, you choose the hard one. Because somewhere deep down, easy feels wrong. Simple feels like cheating. Rest feels like weakness. Flow feels like failure. And this is where the cultural programming reinforces it. No pain, no gain. Hard work beats talent. The early bird gets the worm. All of it designed to keep you in warrior mode. Always striving, always pushing, always exhausted. But here's the paradox. The beautiful, infuriating paradox that changes everything once you see it. The harder you fight, the farther you get from what you want. Because fighting creates resistance. Forcing creates friction. Controlling creates chaos. Think about it. When was the last time you had a brilliant idea? I'll bet it wasn't when you were sitting at your desk, grinding away, forcing yourself to think. It was in the shower, on a walk, right before you fell asleep, in moments when you finally let go. That's not coincidence, that's a clue. Your mind, when it's fighting, when it's under pressure, when it's white-knuckling through life, it can't access the optimal path. It's too busy battling to see the door that was open the whole time. And this leads us to the question nobody wants to ask. What if the flow you've been resisting is actually trying to take you exactly where you need to go? Here's where it gets interesting, and here's what no one talks about. Your mind is not your friend right now. I know that sounds harsh, but hear me out. Your mind thinks it's protecting you. It thinks it's making rational decisions, logical choices, smart moves. But here's the kicker. Your mind is being puppeted by forces called pendulums. These pendulums are energy structures built from collective thought. The pendulum of grind culture. The pendulum of you must prove your worth. The pendulum of control or die. And they feed on your energy, your stress, your struggle. So your mind, thinking it's helping, makes what it calls reasonable decisions. And these decisions always lead you into more struggle, more complexity, more fight. Because that's what feeds the pendulum. Let me give you an example. You need to find something. Your mind immediately suggests the most complicated route. Drive across town, check 5 stores, research for hours, and you do it because it feels responsible, logical, smart. But then later, exhausted and empty-handed, you find the thing you needed right near your house. And you think, why didn't I check there first? Because your mind, under the influence of pendulums, cannot see the simple path. It's wired for complexity, for struggle, for proof that you earned it. Your mind is not trying to hurt you, but it's not free, and neither are you as long as you trust its reasonable decisions without question. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I needed to solve a problem in my work, a significant problem. And my mind went into overdrive. I made lists, I researched, I analyzed every possible solution. I stayed up late, stressed out, convinced that if I just thought hard enough, I'd find the answer. Days went by. I was exhausted, frustrated, feeling like a failure because I couldn't crack it. And then one morning I was making coffee, not thinking about the problem at all, just pouring water, watching steam rise from the cup. And suddenly, there it was, the solution. Crystal clear, elegant, simple. So obvious I almost laughed. But here's what matters. It wasn't a solution I could have found through force, through analysis, through grinding. Because my stressed, fighting mind was blocking me from seeing it. The answer was always there. In what transurfing calls the flow of variations, the field of all possibilities. But my mind, churning with importance, with pressure, with the need to control, created so much noise that I couldn't hear the signal. The moment I let go, the moment I stopped fighting, the path revealed itself. Now you might be thinking, that's just luck, coincidence, a fluke. And that's exactly what your mind wants you to think. Because if you realized how often this happens, how often the answer appears when you stop forcing, you'd question everything you've been taught about effort and struggle. Ready to go deeper? Here's what's really happening. And this is where transurfing gets beautiful. There's something called the space of variations. It's a field an information structure that contains every possible version of reality. Every potential path, every solution, every outcome, all existing simultaneously, organized into chains of cause and effect. Think of it like a vast library, every book already written, every story already told. You're not creating the books, you're choosing which one to read. Now, within this space, there are streams, optimal streams. These are paths where things flow naturally, where solutions appear easily, where the right people show up at the right time, where doors open just as you arrive. Nature follows these streams. Water doesn't fight its way downhill, it finds the path of least resistance. Animals don't force migration routes. They follow ancient flows that work. Your body doesn't think about how to heal a cut. It follows the optimal process automatically. Everything in nature operates on one principle: minimum energy for maximum result. Except humans, we're the only species that fights the current while drowning and calls it virtue. But here's the thing, and this is critical: the optimal streams already contain the solutions to your problems. Already. Not because you'll create them through effort, but because in the field of variations, the problem and the solution exist together, always. The question isn't, how do I create the solution? The question is, how do I access the stream where the solution already exists? And this is where your mind becomes the obstacle, because your mind operates under pressure, stress, anxiety, fear, the constant hum of "I need to figure this out." And when your mind is in that state, it's vibrating at a frequency that cannot align with optimal streams. It's like trying to tune into a radio station while smashing the dial. You're creating so much interference, so much noise that you can't hear the signal that's already broadcasting. Let me explain this through the concept of importance. There are two types. Internal importance is when your mind thinks it's always right, when it trusts its reasonable decisions over the subtle pull of intuition, when it refuses to consider that maybe, just maybe, there's a simpler way. External importance is when you inflate a problem, when you make something so significant, so critical, so heavy that your mind goes into overdrive trying to find a solution worthy of that weight. Both types of importance create what transurfing calls excess potential. And excess potential triggers balancing forces. The universe doesn't like imbalance, so it pushes back. The more importance you assign, the more resistance you create. The more you force, the more obstacles appear. It's not punishment, it's physics. Think about the last time you desperately wanted something. A relationship, a job, an outcome, and you chased it, obsessed over it, gripped it so tightly your knuckles went white. What happened? It either slipped away, or when you finally got it, it wasn't what you thought it would be. Now think about something that came easily, something you didn't stress over. Maybe you applied for something on a whim. Maybe you met someone when you weren't looking. Maybe a solution appeared right when you stopped trying to force it. That's the difference between fighting the current and moving with the flow. Here's the shift, the radical, uncomfortable shift that changes everything. Going with the flow doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean you stop wanting things or working toward goals. It means you stop fighting, you stop forcing, you stop creating interference, and you start listening. This is the part that most people get wrong, and it's why they resist this teaching. They hear "go with the flow" and they think, surrender, give up, be passive, let life happen to you, become a drifter with no agency, and their entire being rejects it. Because they've been warriors for so long, passivity feels like death. But here's the twist. Here's what nobody tells you. Going with the flow in transurfing doesn't mean you're a paper boat. It means you're the helmsman of a ship. You're still steering, you're still choosing direction, you're still actively engaged. But instead of battling the current with white-knuckled force, you're moving with it, reading the water, watching for signs, making small, precise adjustments to stay on course. The warrior fights the ocean, the helmsman works with it. The warrior exhausts himself rowing against the tide. The helmsman adjusts the sail and lets the wind do the work. The warrior thinks strength means force. The helmsman knows strength means precision. This isn't passivity. This is mastery. And here's where it gets even more interesting. When you stop fighting, when you stop creating excess potential, when you let go of importance, something shifts. Your mind quiets, the noise reduces, and suddenly you can hear the signals you've been missing. The intuition that's been whispering gets louder. The signs that were always there become visible. The optimal path that was hidden behind the chaos of your fighting mind reveals itself. You don't become weak, you become attuned. You don't lose control, you gain clarity. You don't give up, you wise up. The flow of variations has been trying to guide you all along. But you've been too busy fighting to notice, too busy forcing to listen, too busy controlling to trust. The question is, are you ready to stop being a warrior and become a helmsman? Because everything I'm about to show you depends on this shift. All right, let's get practical. Because philosophy without application is just entertainment. If you want to move with the flow instead of against it, you need to understand how. And I'm going to give you a framework, a set of principles that you can start using today. First principle, choose simplicity. Every single time you face a decision, ask yourself, what's the simplest way to do this? Not the most impressive way, not the way that proves how hard you work, not the way that makes you feel like you earned it. The simplest way. Your mind will resist this. It'll say, that's too easy, that can't be right, you need to do more. That's the pendulum talking. That's importance creating interference. Ignore it. When you need to solve a problem, ask, what's the easiest path? When you need to make a decision, ask, what feels light? When you need to take action, ask, what requires the least force? This isn't laziness, this is alignment. Because the optimal streams, the paths where things flow, are always the ones that require minimal resistance. Nature doesn't complicate, humans complicate, and then we wonder why everything is hard. Second principle, activate the overseer. The overseer is the part of you that watches your mind, the observer, the witness, the awareness behind your thoughts. Right now, your mind runs the show. It makes snap judgments, it reacts, it defaults to old patterns, and you identify with it so completely that you think its voice is your voice, but it's not. The overseer steps back. It doesn't react immediately. It doesn't trust every reasonable decision the mind makes. It watches, it questions, it asks, is this coming from wisdom or is this coming from fear? From alignment or from importance? When someone suggests something to you, your mind might immediately say, no, that won't work, I know better. That's pendulum energy, that's resistance. The overseer says, interesting, let me consider this without judgment. Maybe there's something here I'm not seeing. You're not being a pushover, you're being strategic. Because what if the suggestion contains a clue, a signpost pointing toward an optimal stream, but your fighting mind is too defensive to notice? Third principle. Rent yourself out. This phrase sounds strange, but it's powerful. It means you stop identifying so heavily with every task, every problem, every goal. You're not a slave to your to-do list. You're not a warrior battling for your worth. You're someone performing actions, observing results, adjusting course. When you rent yourself out, you maintain emotional distance. You do the work, but you're not attached to proving something through it. You're not gripping the steering wheel so tightly that you can't feel when the road changes. You become a participant, not a prisoner. And paradoxically, this makes you more effective because you're calm enough to notice what's working and what's not. You're fluid enough to pivot when the flow shifts. Fourth principle, don't resist immediately. This is huge. When something unexpected happens, when someone interrupts you, when plans change, when you get distracted, your default is probably resistance. No, I was doing something important. No, that's not the plan. No, I need to stay focused. But what if the interruption is the flow trying to redirect you? What if the distraction contains information you need? What if the universe is course correcting and you're fighting it? I'm not saying say yes to everything. I'm saying pause before you react. Observe before you resist. Ask, is this interference or is this information? Sometimes it's interference, sometimes it's a gift disguised as inconvenience. The warrior never knows the difference, the helmsman always checks. Now I know what you're thinking. I know the fears coming up right now. If I stop fighting, I'll become lazy. If I choose simplicity, people will think I'm not serious. If I don't force things, nothing will happen. If I let go of control, everything will fall apart. These fears are real. I'm not going to dismiss them. They're coming from a part of you that's kept you safe for a long time. But I want you to consider something. How's the fighting working out for you? Really? Be honest. Are you getting the results you want? Are you happy? Are you at peace? Or are you exhausted, burned out, and starting to wonder if there's more to life than this constant battle? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Those fears aren't protecting you. They're imprisoning you. The fear that you'll be lazy, that's the pendulum keeping you enslaved to grind culture. The fear that people will judge you, that's the pendulum keeping you performing instead of living. The fear that nothing will happen, that's your mind projecting its own limitations onto reality. Because here's what I've discovered and what thousands of people practicing transurfing have discovered. The flow is more intelligent than your fighting mind. The optimal streams contain better solutions than your forced plans. The universe, when you stop interfering, is more generous than you've been taught to believe. But you'll never know this as long as you're gripping the wheel with white knuckles. You'll never discover what's possible as long as you're too busy fighting to notice the doors opening beside you. The question isn't, what if I fail by letting go? The question is, what am I missing by holding on so tight? And there's only one way to find out. Here's where it all comes together. And this is the moment, the shift that transforms everything. You are not meant to be a warrior. You were never meant to fight your way through life. That role, it was a survival strategy, a trauma response, a way to cope when the world felt unsafe. But you're not that scared child anymore. You're not in survival mode, or at least you don't have to be. What you're meant to be is a helmsman, a navigator, someone who reads the currents, adjusts the sails, and moves with precision instead of force. And when you make this shift, when you stop fighting and start flowing, something miraculous happens. The world stops fighting back. The resistance you've been meeting, it was a mirror. It was balancing forces responding to your excess potential. It was the universe saying, you're creating interference. You're out of alignment. The moment you let go of importance, the moment you stop forcing, the moment you choose simplicity over complexity, the balancing forces dissolve. And the path clears. I'm not talking about magic, I'm talking about physics, energy dynamics, the way reality actually works when you're not creating chaos through your fighting. Think about it. When have things flowed in your life? When have doors opened effortlessly? When have solutions appeared without struggle? I'll tell you when. In moments when you weren't gripping, when you were relaxed, when you'd let go of needing to control every detail, when you'd surrendered the outcome. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. That's you finally in sync with the optimal streams that were there all along. And here's the most powerful part, the part that gives me chills every time I see someone realize it. You don't have to change who you are. You don't have to become someone else. You don't have to give up your goals or your ambitions or your drive. You just have to change one thing: how you approach the journey. From force to flow, from control to trust, from fighting to navigating. The helmsman isn't weaker than the warrior. The helmsman is wiser, because the helmsman knows something the warrior refuses to accept. The current is not your enemy, it's your ally, and it knows where you're trying to go better than your stressed, fighting mind ever could. Your mind brought you to the waterfall. The flow of variations wants to take you to the ocean. The question is, which one are you going to trust? So here's what I want you to do. Not someday, not when you feel ready. Today, for the next 24 hours, I want you to run an experiment. Just one day, that's all I'm asking. Every time you need to make a decision today, big or small, ask yourself, what's the simplest way? Not the most responsible, not the way that proves you're working hard, not the way that looks impressive to others, the simplest way. If you need to find something, don't overthink it. Check the obvious place first. If you need to solve a problem, don't create a complicated strategy. Try the easy solution. If you need to make a choice, don't analyze it to death. Listen to your gut. And here's the second part of the experiment. When something unexpected happens, when you get interrupted, when plans change, when someone suggests something you weren't considering, don't automatically resist. Pause. Activate the overseer. Ask, what if this is the flow redirecting me? What if this is information I need? You don't have to follow every suggestion. You don't have to say yes to everything. Just notice how often your first response is resistance. Notice how much energy you spend fighting things that might actually be helping you. And the third part, at the end of the day, reflect. Did choosing simplicity make things harder or easier? Did pausing before resisting give you new information? Did the day flow differently when you stopped forcing? I already know what you're going to discover, because I've seen this transformation in myself and in countless others. You're going to realize that most of the struggle in your life is self-created. That the fighting you thought was necessary was actually interference. That the control you thought was keeping you safe was actually keeping you stuck. And you're going to feel something you haven't felt in a long time: relief. The relief of not having to battle anymore. The relief of realizing that life doesn't have to be this hard. The relief of discovering that when you stay creating resistance, the world becomes gentler. This is what going with the flow really means. Not passivity, not giving up, not drifting. It means becoming the conscious creator you were always meant to be. It means moving with the current instead of against it. It means trusting that the universe is on your side, not in some woo-woo way, but in a very real, practical, observable way. The optimal streams are there. They've always been there, waiting for you to stop fighting long enough to notice them. The flow of variations contains paths you can't even imagine right now. Solutions so elegant, so simple, so perfect that when you find them, you'll wonder how you ever missed them. But you can only access them from a place of alignment, a place of calm, a place where you're steering, not thrashing, navigating, not battling. This is your invitation, not to become weak, but to become wise, not to give up, but to wise up, not to stop wanting what you want, but to stop blocking yourself from receiving it. You've been fighting long enough. You've proven yourself 1,000 times over. You've shown the world and yourself that you can endure, that you can push through, that you can survive on willpower alone. Now it's time to discover what happens when you stop surviving and start flowing. When you stop being a warrior and become a helmsman. When you stop forcing doors open and notice the ones that were already unlocked. The current has been waiting for you. The optimal streams have been calling. The flow has been trying to take you home. All you have to do is stop fighting long enough to let it. If something shifted in you during this video, if you felt that spark of recognition, that moment of yes, this is what I needed to hear, do me a favor. Don't let this be just another piece of content you consume and forget. Hit that subscribe button, because this is video 22 in the Reality Transurfing series. We've come a long way together, and there's one more piece left, the final piece. Next video, we're diving into something that will tie everything together. How to know when the flow is redirecting you versus when your mind is just creating fear. How to read the signs that have been there all along, and the one question that reveals whether you're following your soul or just convincing yourself. It's the culmination of everything we've covered. You'll find the playlist and the next video linked in the description below. Drop one word in the comments that captures where you are right now. Just one word, because I read these and your word matters. Until then, stop fighting, start flowing, and remember, the path was always open. You just had to stop forcing long enough to see it.